Welcome, podcast listeners. This is the Heartache Connoisseur coming to you from flyover country down here in my basement. And I'm just a country psychiatrist trained in the tradition of the great physician. And we're doing the Lord's work here today, talking about love. And we've been exploring the concept of love within the model of the states of matter, the solid, the liquid, and you guessed it, the gas. And gas is important for any loving relationship. And I'm about to give you some hot air right now. Gosh, you know, I love to talk about Shelley. I adore the woman. And there's just so many things to love about her. And I've listed but a few. I've only scratched the surface. But one more thing to add to the list of reasons is that I'm not making this up. This is not a tall tale. I've never one time heard the woman fart. Not once. I've never smelled it either. I don't know what she does with them. Hell, she's lactose intolerant. I don't know. I fart all the time, constantly, loudly, with panache. And she's quiet as a church mouse over there. So anyway, you know, it's just, it's a lovely thing because she's just such a lady. And not that there's anything wrong with cutting a big one for either gender, but I really appreciate the ways that she's just so well-mannered and, you know, she's just easy to love in so many ways. And to me, I just find it, I know her well enough to know that to her, that's a sign of, it's really a sign of respect to me and affection and a belief about how a person ought to conduct themselves around others. So, you know, more power to her. I love it. And I, however, come from the barbarian school of relating to others. So, anyway, a gas. Let's talk about the properties of a gas and how love is like a gas. Well, a gas is different than a solid and a liquid, as you may be aware. We're all swimming in gas all the time in the form of the atmosphere around us, which is made of a collection of gases. Gases swirl, they get whirled up, they form tornadoes and cyclones and tempests, and they have great power when they are driven by the forces of weather. Power for destruction, power for erosion, power to move waters, power to destroy homes, and power to destroy people and automobiles and carry cows right up into the air. But anyway, I mean, it's a powerful thing, nature is, and it's full of metaphors. And I love to talk about nature as it pertains to the things that I care about deeply, because there's always something to learn as we just sort of explore. And I think gas is unique because it doesn't exactly stay. It takes the shape of a container, but unless it's sealed, it won't stay in there. Unlike a liquid, which also takes the shape of its container, but will stay in an unsealed container because of gravity. Air, being as light as it is, and lacking in density, will move around and float away. And the other thing that's interesting about air is that we use it to propel things. I was thinking about different vehicles of flight and the ways that air are involved in each one. So let's do the hot air balloon first. A hot air balloon, it's filled with air, and you use a burner. There's a gaseous burner there that you every once in a while you just pull the string and it floats up some heat into the balloon, and it gradually fills this giant container and lifts the machine right up off the ground gradually, and you float away. You don't have necessarily a lot of control over where the thing goes. You kind of are at the mercy of the winds. But that does something very important, which is it allows you to it puts you in a position where you get to enjoy the scenery and you don't have to worry about staying on course. Contrast that with a helicopter, let's say. A helicopter puts a lot of force against the air in the form of those big rotating blades. They push down, which cause lift and raises the machine up off the ground. And it's windy. From the movies, at least, it looks really obnoxious to be near one of those things. It kicks up a lot of dust. And unlike a hot air balloon, if the power of the machine goes out, that thing drops like a rock. A hot air balloon, if your burner stops working, you're just going to gradually float down to the ground safely. So it's the irony that the helicopter, where there's a great amount of energy expenditure put into keeping the thing afloat, is what ultimately results in its quick demise if there is no more energy being put in. Let's take a rocket, though. A rocket is heated gas directionally out the back of one of those things, and it pushes it up into the air at great speeds to great heights. And in the case of a rocket, the technology has allowed us to explore unknown places. It has allowed us to go far beyond Earth. It's taken us to other planets and beyond. It's given us scientific knowledge that's unprecedented, and it's been quite a blessing and an educational thing to the human race, as have the other machines as well. But rockets are unique in that they have the ability to leave the atmosphere completely behind, and it's because they have so much propulsive force behind them that they can overcome the forces of gravity and resistance from our atmosphere and such. And there's another thing to note about rockets. It's with all of that power comes some extreme dangers as well. And when a rocket goes down, it's quite a show. I mean, and it's one of those things. Everybody's seen a clip on the news of the rocket that kind of loses its course and it's flying around all over the place like a bottle rocket without a stick, and it can explode. It can certainly take the lives of those that are inside if there are people in there. And so, with that level of power comes a great deal of risk. And you know what? When they break, they send pieces and shards all over the place that are found many states away and such, which is a bit different than, say, a helicopter or a hot air balloon that comes down. So this makes me think about relationships. Let's do a relationship comparison. So the hot air balloon represents the healthy relationship. This is something that's supported by the hot air within. It's heated gradually. There is intermittent energy put in, and it's conserved. It's not all blown at once like a rocket. And it's done in such a way that it's self-sustaining to some degree. It's like a top. You spin it up and it winds down gradually. And a hot air balloon is like that. You put in some energy and it winds down gradually. Not only that, they tend to be colorful. They tend to be beautiful. They're works of art. They tend to draw crowds. It makes you stop and look. Like, what is that? Oh, that's a hot air. Look at that. There's a whole bunch of them over there. I wonder. And you go over there and there's a bunch of people. They got together and had a picnic and launched hot air balloons and just had a great time. So that's kind of the metaphor for the healthy relationship. Now let's take the helicopter, for example. And to me, this represents a certain kind of relationship where there is a level of effectiveness about it. It's able to function in some really unique ways. It hovers. It has directionality. It's on task to some degree, and it's also vulnerable. It's very mechanically vulnerable, and as I said, you don't really get a lot of opportunity to glide down gracefully with a helicopter, and that's like a relationship that becomes a bit more like a partnership where there's been a lack of I don't know, you might say proper relational maintenance, and it just feels like it just takes so much force to get this thing to move along. It's like pushing a train car up a hill almost. And while it is a pleasant ride at times, it's sometimes quite noisy and windy and obnoxious and blows a lot of dust up and kicks things around and is got some downsides as well. So, what is the rocket then? You could think of the rocket a couple of different ways. I think that there's the functional rocket and the dysfunctional rocket. The functional rocket is what I'll get to in a second. I think the dysfunctional rocket is that thing which has really gone off course in a big way. It had potential and promise, and something comes along and derails it hard, and it just goes down in a ball of flame. Just, before it even hardly gets off the ground sometimes. Sometimes those rockets don't even make it, 30 feet in the air before the fire crawls up into the gas tank and it goes boom, and the people that are spectating are at risk, and it's not pretty. However, the functional rocket is sort of like what the hot air balloon can be and can become. And I think when you have a healthy relationship, you have to go through a hot air balloon phase, and you can move in from time to time into a rocket phase, and you can kind of go back and forth between the two. Excuse me. And you can probably see where this is going. That rocket, when it's well engineered and put together right and fueled properly and the conditions are there, man, that thing can soar. It can soar to new heights. It can explore distant lands. It can go to places never dreamed possible in a relationship. And this is akin to the level of depth and intimacy that one can experience in a healthy relationship that's been well maintained. You start out and you're this hot air balloon. You give a little gas. You point it up, and it takes the thing up off the ground. And then eventually, as time goes on, imagine it morphing into this rocket and leaving the stratosphere. And I think that's a really good metaphor for the ways that gas and love and loving relationships might all kind of relate together. And so, what does that mean? It's time for a little self-reflection here, folks. I've certainly been in all different kinds. I've been in relationships that are well represented by each one of those metaphors, and even I would say my marriage was probably all of those at times. And that's an important point. You're not a success or a failure. You're a work in progress. You're in cycle. You're learning. You're growing. You backslide sometimes, and you gain ground sometimes. But here's an opportunity to kind of just think, okay, well, what kind of situation do I find myself in? Am I in kind of a pleasant hot air balloon phase that's very enjoyable with a partner in the basket here with me, and I can just sort of enjoy the countryside and float along a beautiful summer day and let the breeze take us? And if you are, great. That's a lovely thing. It's a lovely, beautiful thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And maybe you've had some days in the past that were more like rocket ships and more like helicopters. Maybe when you were raising the kids, that's a very kind of common thing for the relationship to become. We even have the helicopter parent. But that's the way it often feels when life is demanding a lot of you. It feels like a lot of energy expenditure has to go in for a little bit of lift. And some of us find ourselves in relationships that are like rockets. Many of us have experienced the unhealthy rocket, which is the crash and burn, the one that appears to have great promise and looks very exciting, but explodes before it gets off the ground. We've all got to have a few of those under our belts. And many of us have also experienced the healthy rocket ride and have made the transformation from balloon to rocket. And if you haven't, I think it's something to aspire to. I think I think in my life, I've seen fleeting moments of that type of thing, and it's not a place necessarily where I would say that people live or even should live. It's something that kind of and that's the other thing about rockets. Once they've left the stratosphere, they actually turn their boosters off, and there's no resistance, and they just sort of glide, and they're going super fast, but it looks like they're not moving at all hardly, and they just sail by planets, and they go deep into space, and it's effortless. And I do think that there's a good metaphor there, that relationships can kind of move into this effortless, deep, distant, exploratory phase. And boy, that's what I hope to accomplish in my marriage with Shelley. And I think we've already taken some strides. And how do you get there? What do you got to do to get over all of your own hot air and find yourself in a place with no atmosphere at all? And I think that it really is an acceptance that relationships are transformative over time, that they take time to evolve. We often get into a relationship and think, oh, well, here it is. I love this person. This is how we do it. This is who we are as a couple. We're just going to check the days off. And it's really not like that. And it's something that you kind of have to allow to happen over time. And this is a place to sort of bring God into it. I think God is always working to transform us. He's always sending us messages over the radio, so to speak, while we're in the cockpit, instructing us on how to move to the next stage of flight. And it's important to listen to that. It's important to go out there. You want to keep your instruments on. You don't want to go on an instrumentless flight when you're just not ready. And nobody's ready, because it's chaos out there, and there's weather, and it's unpredictable. And when you come down, you come down hard. And that's sort of like the way the good Lord works in our lives, is that he gives us these instruments and these radio signals. And he's not right there outside the door with a bullhorn or a megaphone. It's polite, and it's cordial, and it's invitational, and it's extremely helpful. That's the thing that we forget, is that, you think about this universe and the degree of complexity that goes into all of this, and the laws that govern physics, and the laws that govern nature and chemistry and biology and all these things. It's just exquisite, and nobody has a good handle on all of this stuff. It's like a giant symphony, and we only can just see a couple of the instruments in the symphony, but we can sort of hear the whole thing. But we really don't know what a lot of those other instruments are that are playing in this symphony. And it's really wildly complex. So imagine ignoring the author of that symphony, assuming you know where your plane is going, and turning off your instruments. I don't know. I mean, I've tried that, and I always end up in the Bermuda Triangle every single time. And there's a lot of other plane carcasses down there too at the bottom, let me tell you. So that's part of the invitation today, is when you find yourself in flight, you might want to have had some lessons. You might want to take some instruction. You might want to check your instrument dials. You sometimes got to bail out and grab your parachute, but a lot of times you just ride through the turbulence, and it'll smooth out, and you'll find a bright sunny sky on the other side. Well, how's that for some gassy metaphors? I like it. Gas is great. Gas is aromatic. Gas carries a smell of a fresh baked apple pie, and it also carries stench, both. And I'd like to be a pie. I don't know about you. It's my daughter's birthday coming up, December 24th, the Christmas Eve baby. And she's turning 8 this year. And I just, it's so fun to get to have that kind of tacked on to the Christmas season. And and some people say, well, you get gypped when you have a birthday close to a holiday, but I don't see it that way. I think what it does is it brings the focus of that time of year onto her as well. And we all remember collectively. It's so easy to remember her birthday because it's Christmas Eve, and everybody kind of holds that one a little bit more special. I certainly do. So last night we sat around the table and we asked the kids, we asked her rather what she would like for dinner. We're going to celebrate it tomorrow. Or excuse me, we're going to celebrate it tonight because she's not going to be with me on the day of her birthday. But she wants enchiladas, so get ready for a lot of gas. Can we leave the black beans out this time, honey? Why do you keep opening those things? You know I can't resist. Stop pureeing them and putting them in the sauce. Anyway, we're going to have enchiladas, homemade. It's one of my family's favorite dishes. And then this is how you do it with your kids, too. You know, you don't ask them, hey, what kind of cake do you want? You give them the options and you play up the option you want. So this is how I did it. At first I said, hey, babe, what kind of cake do you want? Thinking, well, she'll tell me chocolate or, strawberry or something. I said, now, but before you answer, let me tell you all of your options. You have cake, and these are the common flavors. You have cupcakes. You have pie. And you know what? There's this other thing that oftentimes people forget about. It's called ice cream cake. And everybody else at the table is like, that's what you want. You want ice cream cake from Cold Stone. That's it. Hey, free advertisement, everybody. Or Whitey's. Whitey's is what they said too. But it was funny how, and that's the way it is. You give them the options and let them know all the ways that you can bless them. Just get an open mind and let them feel really special. Let them feel really important, and let them feel autonomy. That's something that the good Lord's been dealing with me about. I think we have this tendency in parenting to really ratchet down hard on our kids, and if we don't make them do this and that, and do 6 little tasks before they enjoy a video game or whatever, that we're going to raise them wrong. But what it ends up doing, I'm discovering, is that it teaches them that they're not autonomous individuals. It teaches them that they don't know how to manage their own time. It teaches them to people please. It teaches them to do tasks with no pleasure or joy, but just as a means to an end, just to get some outcome. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to unlearn all those habits and find out that if you don't learn how to enjoy the task for what it is, you're never going to be happy. So I don't know, it's a little off track, but there's just a few thoughts I've been having on the subject of parenting this last few weeks. And I think that'll about wrap it up for this episode. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to listen, as always. And please check out my Patreon page. You can go to theheartacheconnoisseur.com, which is the website representing the podcast, theheartacheconnoisseur.com. And there should be a link there to the Patreon page. And Patreon, if you don't know, is a company that's devised a way to effectively and efficiently collect donations for things that people want to support. I'm laying off the advertisements and I'm going with Patreon as a way to support this podcast. And I do provide it as a service. I hope you find it helpful. If you find it helpful and feel so moved, I would greatly appreciate your support. But you know what? If you don't feel so moved, fine. Enjoy the thing anyway. Share the crap out of it. Listen to it for a decade and never give me a dime. I really just want to tell you the things that I find interesting and important and hopefully helpful. So have a good time with it, and don't feel one iota of remorse if you don't have the cash or it's just not a cause you want to give your resources to. I totally get it. There's a lot of good things to do with your money. So, and to anybody that does feel led to support, I just couldn't thank you anymore, and that's a great honor, and it speaks very highly of you and your willingness to be giving, and so thank you. I think that'll wrap it up. We'll see what happens here. We got the weekend coming up, and I'm looking forward to a little R&R. I think I'm going to go into the shop, maybe work on some projects. I've kind of started to paint a little bit, which is kind of a new thing for me. I never thought I'd get into painting. I used to like to draw as a kid and kind of got out of it and moved into the math and the science and that sort of thing. But I've discovered as I've aged that that activity, that particular activity is very centering for me and kind of gets me out of my head and gets me into to some beauty and color and things like that I find balancing and restorative. So I'll probably do some of that. And the other thing I've been doing is I can take these paintings and I can work them into a woodworking project. So I just sent my mom this little side table that I made. I made this painting and put it on the top and covered it in this layer of epoxy that kind of protects the paint and the texture and that sort of thing, and provides a flat surface, kind of like an epoxy bar top. You may have seen that in restaurants and that sort of thing. And it's kind of an interesting way to do it, and she seemed to like it. So anyway, with that, I will just give you one more reminder to check us out on social media. Feel free to comment, provide any sort of feedback that you feel compelled to provide. I'd love to build a relationship with you, the audience, in the form of comments and emails. You can email me at contact@theheartacheconnoisseur.com, and we look forward to getting to know you better and better over time. And again, share these things. Help me out and send those links around, and that would really be a great thing. The YouTube channel is maybe what I'd recommend to send along, but you can also find us as an audio-only podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud and that type of thing. So any way you want to digest the Heartache Connoisseur. With that, I will leave you. Have a great day, everybody, and happy holidays to you.